My name is Nora Caldwell. I was 32 years old the year I learned what a single manila folder could do to an entire family. My grandmother turned 79 on a Saturday in October. She baked her own cake, vanilla, buttercream roses, her specialty since before I was born. She set the table for 8 people. Good plates, paper napkins, dried hydrangeas from her own garden. My parents were skiing in Aspen. My brother sent a text at 4:15 in the afternoon. Happy Bay, Gran. Skiing is amazing. My father didn't text at all. My mother posted a ski goggle selfie to her church group chat with the single word, blessed. I drove 3 hours from Hartford after my shift, still in my work flats. Gas station bouquet on the passenger seat. I found her sitting alone at the kitchen table. Candles melted down into the frosting. Ice cream gone soft in its carton. She looked up at me like she wasn't sure I was real. I cut her a slice. I sang happy birthday. She asked me to start over halfway through, so I sang it again. The next morning, while I was helping her clean up, 2 strangers knocked on her door. They handed me a sealed folder, thick, signed across the flap in my grandmother's own handwriting. What was inside that folder ended my family as I knew it. Welcome to Calm Drama Stories, where ordinary people set quiet boundaries that change everything, and dignity always gets the last word. If you've ever had to stand up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves, stay with me. This one's for you. That evening is pressed into me like a thumbprint in wet clay. I'd pulled into her gravel driveway at 8:12. The porch light was on. Every other window was dark. Inside, the kitchen table told the whole story. 8 place settings. A centerpiece of dried hydrangeas she'd arranged herself that morning. The cake in the center, vanilla buttercream 79 spelled out in pink gel. Candles burned to waxy nubs. A gallon of Neapolitan had sweated through its carton onto the tablecloth. She was sitting at the head of the table in her lavender cardigan, hands folded around a glass of water. Nora. She smiled, then frowned. Is it Tuesday? It's Saturday, Gran. Your birthday. Oh, she touched the edge of the cake. I thought I was making this for the church bake sale. We ate cake with our hands because neither of us felt like washing forks. I sang happy birthday twice. At 10 o'clock, I carried her to bed. She weighed almost nothing. Her wrist was the width of a paper towel roll. As I pulled the quilt to her chin, she grabbed my hand. Her eyes went sharp, focus-housed, like a radio catching a clear signal through static. They think I don't notice, she whispered. I waited for more. She was already asleep. Let me tell you who I am in this family. The Caldwells of Briarwood are a particular kind of Connecticut comfortable. My father, Gregory, managed regional accounts for an insurance brokerage until he could golf 3 times a week and call it consulting. My mother, Diane, organized charity galas and sat on the library board. My brother, Aaron, ran a small real estate development firm and drove a German sedan that cost more than my annual salary. And then there was me, the paralegal. I worked at a 4-person elder law firm in Hartford, wills, trusts, guardianship filings. I earned $47,000 a year and studied for the bar at night. My family called me the paperwork one. At holiday dinners, my mother would tilt her head and say, Nora is still doing her little legal assistant thing, like I was selling friendship bracelets at a farmer's market. I didn't argue. I just read the fine print. But this house was mine in every way that mattered and no way that counted legally. I took my first steps on that kitchen linoleum. My grandmother Lorraine taught me to read a lease on the back porch when I was 19, red pen between her teeth, reading glasses on her nose. She co-signed my first apartment when my parents wouldn't. I had slept in the guest room that night and lay awake tracing the same ceiling crack I traced since I was 6. Around midnight, I got up for water. On the hallway shelf, tucked behind a framed family photo, I found a business card. Brenda Voss, Voss and Dean Realty. On the back, in someone else's handwriting, comp at value $680,000, quick close possible. I put the card back. My hands were steady. My stomach wasn't. Sunday morning, I scrubbed the kitchen while Lorraine dozed in her recliner. At 10:15, someone knocked. 2 people stood on the porch. A woman, about 60. Silver bob, wool coat, leather briefcase. Professional. The man beside her was younger, maybe 40, carrying a notary seal in his zippered pouch. Nora Caldwell? The woman asked. Yes. My name is Ruth Adler. This is my colleague Nathan Prout. Your grandmother retained my firm 14 months ago. She held out a manila folder, thick, sealed, my grandmother's name printed on the tab in blue ink. She asked us to deliver this to you personally. When the time came? When the time came for what? Ruth glanced through the screen door at the recliner. Her expression softened. Come to my office when you're ready. She pressed her card into my hand. Don't discuss this with your parents before we talk. They were in their car and pulling away before I could form a second question. I stood on the porch holding the folder. Maybe 40 pages. The seal had been signed across the flat in Lorraine's handwriting. Looping, deliberate, the capital L with its exaggerated tail, the double loop on the lowercase r. This wasn't a shaky mark. This was written by a woman who knew exactly what she was putting her name on. My phone buzzed. I texted from my mother, who's at the door. Don't sign anything, Nora. I turned the phone face down and brought the folder inside. I broke the seal. Inside was a stack of legal documents I recognized immediately from my work. A recorded deed, a trust instrument, a durable power of attorney, notarized witness pages, a physician's letter on medical letterhead dated 14 months ago. Clipped to the front, a handwritten note on cream personal stationery, blue ink. Nora. When they come for the house, open this. Everything you need is here. I love you. I'm sorry. It has to be you. I'm sorry. It has to be you. Each time, the words, when they come for the house, landed harder. Not if, when, she had known. 14 months ago, before the forgetting got bad, before she started calling me by my mother's name, before the wandering in the stove left on, and the day she got lost driving to the post office 2 blocks away, she had known someone would come for the house. And she had prepared. Monday morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Something told me to stay. I found it while taking out the recycling, a lockbox. A realtor's combination lockbox clamped to the gas meter behind the hydrangea bushes, tucked just out of sight from the front walk. Somebody had been showing this house. In Lorraine's mail pile, buried under a phone bill and a coupon flyer, I found a listing sheet off-market, printed on Boss and Dean Realty letterhead. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, original hardwood, quarter-acre lot, listed at $680,000. $50,000 under the most recent comparable sale in the neighborhood. In the kitchen junk drawer, I found the worst of it. A purchase agreement. Unsigned, but filled in. Buyer, Stonewall Capital Group, LLC. Cash offer. 30-day close. The seller's signature line was blank, but someone had penciled L. Caldwell in block letters below it. Like a rehearsal. The listing agent was Brenda Voss. The contact on the buyer's side was a name I didn't recognize, but the seller's representative listed on the agreement was Aaron Caldwell, my brother. I sat on the kitchen floor and spread the pages around me like a mosaic. The lockbox, the listing sheet, the purchase agreement, Brenda's card, a sticky note in my mother's handwriting. Closing target November 15th. 3 weeks away. I picked up the manila folder and opened it to the first page of the trust instrument. I read every word. Then I called my mother. Oh, Nora. Diane's voice had that specific warmth, the one she used on parish volunteers and restaurant hostesses. How's Gran doing? We had the most wonderful time in Aspen. The snow was just divine. There's a lockbox on her gas meter. Silence. 2 seconds. 3. Sweetheart, that's being handled. Dad and Aaron have been working with a lovely agent to find a suitable transition plan for your grandmother. She can't keep up this big house on her own. There's a purchase agreement in her kitchen drawer. Nora. The warmth dropped a register. This is a family decision between your father, your brother, and me. We've been managing Gran's affairs for months. You don't need to worry about the details. Does she know the house is being sold? She knows what she needs to know. A pause. I could hear the clink of a wine glass. Aaron's company is in a difficult stretch. The house can fund a proper care facility for Gran and help your brother through a rough patch. It's the responsible thing. It's her house, Mom. Nora. All the way down to cold. Final. Your grandmother has dementia. She leaves the stove on. She got lost driving to the post office. She is not the person who should be making decisions about a $680,000 asset. Then she said it. She won't remember the house by Christmas. The line hummed between us. Then it's a good thing I remember, I said. I hung up. Ruth Adler's office was on the second floor of a converted brownstone on Asylum Avenue. The waiting room had faded oriental rugs and framed diplomas from Yale Law. A small brass sign read, Adler and Associates, Elder Law and Estate Planning. I had called at 7:30 that morning. Her receptionist put me through in under a minute. If you know anything about law offices, you know that means they were expecting the call. Ruth met me in a conference room with a pot of Earl Grey and a box of tissues placed exactly between us on the table, without comment. Your grandmother came to me 14 months ago, she began. Early August of last year. She'd had an episode, got disoriented driving, ended up 2 towns over, couldn't remember how to get home. A neighbor brought her back. She called me the next morning. She was scared, I said, of exactly what's happening now. Ruth folded her hands. She told me my son will do whatever Diane tells him, and Diane will sell the house the minute I can't stop her. She wanted to stop it before she couldn't. I put my tea down. She chose you specifically, Miss Caldwell. She said you were the only one who would fight for the house, because you were the only one who understood what it meant. Ruth walked me through it piece by piece. 14 months ago, Lorraine had come to this office wearing pressed slacks and pearl earrings, carrying her own folder, the deed to the house, tax records, her 1998 will, and a list of questions handwritten on yellow legal pad paper in the same looping blue ink I'd seen on the note. She was methodical, focused. She told me she'd noticed the forgetting starting with names, then appointments, then the route to the post office, Ruth said. Her doctor had used the words early stage. She said she had maybe a year, maybe 2 before the window closed. The window for what? For making legally binding decisions while she still had capacity. The legal architecture was clean. I recognized every instrument for my work, irrevocable living trust. Lorraine had transferred the house, the deed, the title, everything, into the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust, dated August 9th of last year. She was the trustee while she had capacity. I was the successor trustee. If she became incapacitated, legal control of the house passed to me. Not my father. Not Aaron. Me. A durable power of attorney naming me as her agent for all financial and healthcare decisions. The durability clause meant it survived her incapacity. It didn't expire when she got sick. It activated. And a physician's letter from Dr. Helen Mercer, her neurologist, dated the same day, confirming that Lorraine had full testamentary capacity when she signed. She understood what a trust was. She understood what a power of attorney did. She understood she was placing her house beyond the reach of anyone except the granddaughter she trusted. So the house isn't hers to sell anymore, I said. The house belongs to the trust. Lorraine cannot sell it as an individual. And no personal power of attorney over Lorraine grants authority over assets already inside the trust. Only the trustee can authorize a sale. And the trustee is me. Once Lorraine is determined to lack capacity, yes. Then Ruth leaned forward. If your family has had your grandmother sign anything recently, a new power of attorney, a listing agreement, while she lacked capacity, those documents may not be enforceable. She let that sit. I drove back to Briarwood that evening. Through the front window, I could see Lorraine in her recliner, the television murmuring, her reading glasses folded on the armrest. I let myself in with the spare key she'd given me when I was 16, the one she'd never given my parents. Gran, she looked up. 3 seconds, maybe 4. Her eyes were absolutely clear. Not the soft confusion of most days. Clear like creek water over gravel. You went to see Ruth, she said. I stopped in the doorway. You remember Ruth? I remember enough. She turned her reading glasses in her hands. I remember I was scared, and I went to a lawyer, and I told her what Diane would do. Did I get it right? I sat on the arm of the couch. You got it exactly right, Gran. Good. She paused. They've been bringing people through the house. Tuesdays, when the nurse is here, I hear the doors open and close, strangers looking at my kitchen. I know. Erin brought papers. Her voice was quiet. I don't remember what I signed. I took her hand. It doesn't matter what you signed, you already took care of it. She squeezed my fingers. Thin, deliberate. I'm not gone yet, Nora. The words hung in the kitchen air. Fragile and fierce. By tomorrow, she might not remember saying them, but I would. I would remember for both of us. Aaron showed up Wednesday. He didn't knock. He never knocked. Just walked in with his car keys jingling and his smile already in place. The way he entered every room, like the room should be grateful he'd arrived. "Hey, Noor." He kissed the top of my head. Cedar cologne. Leather interior. "Just checking in on Gran. I'm staying for a while." "Oh, yeah." He helped himself to a water from the fridge and leaned against the counter like he owned the place. "Taking some time off from the paralegal gig." He said, "Paralegal, the way you'd say hobby. Aaron, I know about the listing." His water paused halfway to his mouth. One beat. Two. Then the smile adjusted. Not gone, just reclassified. Warmth to negotiation. "Look, I know it seems fast, but here's the thing. The company's in a rough patch. I've got a balloon payment coming due in 8 weeks. $740,000. If I miss it, the bank takes everything. 3 years of work. Gone. So you're selling Gran's house. I'm helping the family manage an asset Gran can't manage herself." He set the can down. "Nora, the money solves everything. Gran gets a nice facility. Dad and Mom stop worrying. I keep my business. Everybody wins. Except Gran. Gran doesn't know what day it is. She knows people are walking through her house." Aaron's jaw tightened. He stepped closer. "Don't make this difficult. We're family." "Family helps. Family. Is that what you told her when you brought the papers?" He stared at me. Then the smile came back, harder. Performative. "It's basically sold already, Nora. The closing is set." He left his empty can on the counter and walked out without rinsing it. That night, I searched the bottom of the hallway credenza. I found what they'd had her sign. A power of attorney dated September 3rd, barely 2 months ago. It named Gregory Caldwell as Lorraine's agent for all financial and property decisions. Stapled to it, a listing authorization granting Aaron the right to act as seller's representative. I laid them beside the originals from Ruth's folder, and the signature differences hit me before I finished unfolding the pages. The August documents, strong pen pressure, loops clean and confident, every letter connecting with that distinctive tail on the capital L. The hand of a woman who signed Christmas checks with a fountain pen. The September power of attorney. Trembling lines. The L barely rose above the baseline. The loops collapsed. The pen had lifted between letters, leaving gaps where there should have been flow. This was not the hand of a woman who understood what she was signing. This was the hand of a woman who was told where to press down. I checked the date on my phone. September 3rd. My stomach dropped. That was the same week Lorraine had been taken to the emergency room after a fall. I'd received a text from Diane. "Gran took a tumble. Nothing serious. She's resting." I'd thought nothing of it. The hospital discharge summary, buried in the mail pile, read, "Patient disoriented. Intermittent confusion. Recommend neurological follow-up." They had her sign a power of attorney during the same week she was hospitalized for confusion. I photographed everything. Then I called Ruth. Ruth came to the house on Friday. Not her office, the house. She said it mattered that we do this at Lorraine's kitchen table. 5 documents in a row, edges aligned like evidence at a hearing. The recorded trust deed, filed with the Briarwood Town Clerk on August 12th of the previous year, public record. The durable power of attorney, naming me, executed the same day. Dr. Mercer's capacity evaluation, Mrs. Ben. Caldwell demonstrates full understanding of the nature and consequences of the legal instruments she is executing. The September power of attorney, shaky signature, no capacity evaluation, no independent witness, executed during a week of documented medical confusion. And the listing agreement, Aaron's name as seller's representative, Brenda Boss as agent, off-market, price $50,000 below comparable homes. Ruth looked at me across the table. The house has been in the trust for over a year. The September power of attorney, even if valid, doesn't grant authority over trust assets. And it almost certainly isn't valid given the medical record. She paused. This sale cannot close. The house was never theirs to sell. We made a plan. Quiet, methodical. Built on paper, not anger. Step 1. A current capacity evaluation from Dr. Mercer, something a court would accept to confirm that the September POA was signed while Lorraine lacked a mental ability to understand it. I called Monday morning. The receptionist put me on hold for 11 minutes. "I'm sorry, Ms. Caldwell. We've received a request to restrict access to Mrs. Caldwell's medical records." I gripped the phone. "Restrict access from whom?" "I can't disclose that, but the request came in approximately 6 weeks ago." Medical records and evaluation results are not to be released to anyone other than the designated family contact. And who is the designated family contact? Pause. Gregory Caldwell. They'd locked me out of her medical records. 6 weeks ago, right after they'd had her sign the power of attorney, they hadn't just gotten her to sign, they'd built a wall around her. I called Ruth. Expected, she said. We'll file a HIPAA authorization under your durable POA. Your POA predates theirs and names you as healthcare agent. The clinic is legally obligated to honor it. 2 days later, I had the records. Dr. Mercer agreed to perform a current evaluation. The system works slowly, but it works. Diane came to the house on a Thursday evening. No flowers, no food. She brought a brochure. Maple Glen Assisted Living. She spread it on the kitchen table, the same table where Ruth and I had laid out the documents 3 days earlier. It's a beautiful facility, Nora. Private rooms, a garden, activities every afternoon. Gran doesn't want to leave her house. Gran doesn't know what she wants. Diane smoothed the brochure with both palms. If we transition her before Thanksgiving, we can have the house staged and listed by December 1st. You're staging it for the buyer you already have. Her expression flickered, just a flash, the briefest crack in the plaster. Nora, I know this is emotional for you. You've always been attached to this house. But your brother's company is in real trouble and this family needs to pull together. By selling a 79-year-old woman's home out from under her. After everything I'd done for this family, her voice cracked. Real tears are performative ones. After 32 years, I'd stopped trying to tell. The papers are already with the title company, she said. The closing is November 15th. This is happening, Nora. She left the brochure on the table. I almost walked away that night. It would have been easier. But if you've ever watched someone decide that an older person's worth comes with an expiration date, you know exactly why I stayed. I had 9 days. The closing was set for November 15th at Capital Title Services on Main Street, 3 blocks from the Briarwood Town Green. Diane had booked it like a dinner reservation. Efficient, final, not open for discussion. I sat in Ruth's conference room and laid out the options. Option 1, file an emergency petition with the probate court to block the sale. It would work, Ruth was confident, but it would be public, slow, expensive. It would give Aaron and Diane time to scramble, time to move Lorraine, time to hire their own attorney. Option 2, let the closing happen. Walk in with the documents. Let the truth do what truth does when it meets paperwork that can't withstand it. If you show up at the closing with the recorded trust deed and the capacity evidence, Ruth said, the title company will do the work for you. They cannot insure a title that's in dispute. They won't close the transaction. It ends in that room. She took off her glasses. This is the quieter path. No courtroom. No filings. Just documents on a table in front of witnesses. The buyer, the agent, the title officer, your family. They'll all be in one room. And the documents will speak for themselves. I thought about Lorraine's note. When they come for the house, she hadn't told me to go to court. She'd given me a folder. 9 days. I started counting. Asterisk day 1. Asterisk day 1. I filed a report with Adult Protective Services. The intake worker was patient, precise, and completely unsurprised by anything I described. She'd heard this before. Different names. Same architecture. I gave her the facts. A 79-year-old woman with documented dementia, a power of attorney signed during a week of hospitalization, an off-market home sale priced below comparable value, a son profiting from the transaction, a daughter-in-law directing the process. We'll assign an investigator. Is there anything that expedites the process? There's a closing date in 9 days. I'll flag it as time sensitive. I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat in my car for a full minute watching 2 elderly women walk into the library across the street, arm in arm, laughing about something. Normal. Safe. When I got back to the house, there was a voicemail from Ruth. Nora, something interesting came up. APS told me informally that yours isn't the first report they've received on this situation. Someone filed an anonymous complaint about 6 weeks ago. They didn't follow up because the complainant didn't leave contact information. But the file exists. 6 weeks ago. Right around the time they'd had Lorraine signed a September power of attorney. Someone else had seen what was happening. Someone who hadn't been brave enough to leave a name, but had cared enough to pick up the phone. The system was slower than anger, but it was building. Dearest Carrick's Day 4. My father came alone. He pulled into the driveway in his 10-year-old Buick. Not the car he drove to church or the club, but the one he used for errands. The one nobody would notice. He sat behind the wheel for a long time before he got out. I watched from the kitchen window. His shoulders were hunched. He looked smaller than I remembered. He came in through the back door, the way he'd entered this house since he was a boy. He didn't acknowledge me at first. He just stood in the kitchen, looking at the cabinets his mother had refinished herself, at the window where she'd hung the prism that threw rainbows across the floor every morning. "She used to sing in this kitchen," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Patsy Cline, every Sunday morning. I remember." He sat at the table, hands flat on the maple surface. They shook. "I know what you think of me." He paused. "I didn't want this. I didn't want any of this. Errands and over his head. Diane says the house is the only way. And, Mom," his voice broke, just barely, a hairline fracture in a foundation. "Mom wouldn't want Aaron to lose everything. You could still stop this, Dad." He looked at me. 1 second. One awful, trembling second. I saw the boy who'd grown up in this kitchen, who'd eaten cake off these plates, who'd been carried to bed by the same woman now sleeping in the next room. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. "Diane." He stood up. "I should go." He left through the back door. He didn't say goodbye to his mother. I washed his coffee cup and put it away. Day 5. I bought a cake. Not fancy. A 6-inch round from the bakery on Elm Street. Vanilla with buttercream, because that's what she loved. 1 candle, because 79 individual candles seemed like a fire hazard, and I wanted to make her laugh. I set it on the kitchen table at 3 o'clock. 2 plates, 2 forks, 2 napkins. I made tea. "Gran, come sit." She shuffled in from the living room, reading glasses on top of her head, a crossword folded in her cardigan pocket. She saw the cake and stopped. "Whose birthday?" "Yours. We're doing it over." She sat down. I lit the candle. She looked at the flame, the way you look at something you're trying to hold in your mind carefully, deliberately, like if she stared hard enough, the moment would stick. "Make a wish," I said. She closed her eyes. She blew. The candle went out on the first try. "What did you wish for?" She looked at me with those clear creek eyes. "I wished you'd stay." "We ate cake with forks this time." She told me about the hydrangeas she'd planted along the front walk in 1987, the year I was born. She told me the kitchen table came from her mother's house in Bridgeport, carried on the back of a pickup truck in 1974, and that every scratch on its surface was a Thanksgiving she'd won. Then she put her fork down and leaned toward me. "Don't let them take the table," she said. Quiet. Fierce. "I won't, Gran. The table stays. 4 days until the closing." 4 days until the closing. Day 6. The phone call started. My Aunt Caroline. Careful, concerned. "Nora, honey, your mother says you're trying to take control of Lorraine's finances." She used the word manipulating. Then my mother's friend from the parish council. Then Aaron's business partner. Then a woman from the garden club who'd known Lorraine for 40 years. Each call carried the same script, slight variations on the same theme. Nora is overstepping. Nora is emotional. Nora doesn't understand the family's financial situation. Diane had done what Diane did best. She'd shaped the narrative before I had a chance to speak. I didn't counter it. I didn't post on social media. I didn't call anyone back to plead my case. Ruth had told me, "The documents speak. You don't have to." But that evening, my phone rang one more time. Aunt June, Lorraine's younger sister. 81 years old. Still sharp. Still in Bridgeport. "Nora." Her voice was dry and clear. "I don't believe a word Diane is saying. And I want you to know why." "Why?" "Because your grandmother called me last August. She said she'd been to see a lawyer. She said she was putting the house in order while she still could. She said, 'If anything happens, back Nora up.'" "Nah, P.I." I gripped the phone. "I'm backing you up," Aunt June said. "Whatever you need." 3 days until the closing. Day 8. Everything was in place. Ruth would attend the closing as Lorraine's attorney of record representing the trust. She'd bring certified copies of the recorded trust deed, the durable power of attorney, and the physician's capacity evaluation. APS had assigned an investigator named Sandra Weekes She wouldn't be in the room. That's not how it worked. But she'd confirmed the case was active and time-sensitive. Whatever happened at the closing would become part of her file. I spent the afternoon at the kitchen table reviewing the documents one final time. Trust deed, POA, capacity letter, the September POA with the shaking signature, the listing agreement, the purchase contract, the hospital discharge summary. Every date, every signature, every medical note pointed in the same direction. I practiced what I would say. Short sentences, no accusations, no accusations, no emotion. Just facts, delivered at the volume of a normal conversation. Ruth had coached me. You're not there to argue. You're not there to convince anyone. You're there to present documents that speak for themselves. Let the title officer do the rest. I wasn't the daughter they'd ignored. I wasn't the paperwork one. I was the successor trustee of the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust. And I had every legal right, more than a right, an obligation, to sit at that table. That evening, I ironed a blouse and set out my work flats. The same flats I'd worn the night I drove 3 hours to sing happy birthday to a woman sitting alone in her kitchen. Tomorrow, they would sit down to sign for a house that wasn't theirs, and I would be there when they found out. The night before the closing, I sat with Lorraine in the living room. She was having a good hour. Not a good day, those were rare now, but a good hour. She was working on her crossword, filling in the squares with a ballpoint pen. No pencil because she said pencils were for people who didn't trust themselves. Gran, tomorrow's going to be a big day. She didn't look up. 7 across. Legal instrument of protection. 5 letters. I smiled. Trust. She wrote it in. Smarty pants. She put the crossword down and looked at me. You're staying. I'm staying. She reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out her reading glasses case, the leather one with the brass clasp she'd carried since I was a girl. She opened it, took out a folded piece of paper, and handed it to me. A note. Her handwriting, shaky but legible, recent. For Nora. The keeper of the table. Below it, her signature. Not the strong one from 14 months ago, not the broken one from September. A middle ground from September. A middle ground, trembling but intentional. Written by a woman who knew she was fading and wanted to leave one more mark while she still could. I'm not gone yet, she said. I folded the note into my wallet. In the morning, the folder, the note, and I would walk into that closing together. Capital Title Services occupied a single-story brick building on Main Street with tinted windows and a brass door handle polished to a mirror finish. I parked across the street at 1:45. Ruth pulled in beside me at 1:50. Nathan was already inside. We walked in together. Ruth carried her briefcase. I carried the manila folder. Conference room B, 10 chairs around an oval table. A water pitcher, a printer humming in the corner. Linda Yates, the escrow officer, was arranging documents in neat stacks at the head of the table. She looked up when we entered, glanced at Ruth, and paused for half a second. The kind of pause that meant she recognized the name, Ms. Adler. I didn't see your firm listed on the transaction. I represent the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust, Ruth said. We have documents relevant to this closing. Linda Yates's pen stopped moving. Before she could respond, the door opened behind us. Diane came in first. Cashmere blazer. Church pearls. Her smile already in position, bright, social. The hostess arriving at her own party. Aaron followed in a tailored sport coat. Gregory trailed them, gray-faced, looking at the floor. Then Brenda Voss, the realtor, a stack of closing documents fanned in her hand like a winning hand of cards. And last, Daniel Fisk, the buyer's representative, navy suit. No-nonsense expression. Diane saw me and stopped. Nora. She looked at Ruth, at the folder in my hands. Her smile didn't change, but the muscles underneath it did. What are you doing here? Taking a seat, I said. I sat down at the table. Ruth sat beside me. I placed the manila folder in front of me and waited. The room was very quiet. The printer had stopped humming. Linda Yates looked at Ruth. You said you have documents. I do. Ruth opened her briefcase and laid 3 items on the table. One at a time, each centered and square, the way you'd lay evidence before a judge. First, a certified copy of the recorded trust deed. This deed was recorded with the Briarwood town clerk on August 12th of last year. It transfers the property at 14 Oakwood Lane into the Lorraine E. Caldwell Revocable Living Trust. Miss Caldwell, she nodded to me, is the successor trustee. Diane's smile fell. Not all at once. In stages, like a building losing floors. Second, the durable power of attorney naming Miss Caldwell as Lorraine's agent. Executed August 9th of last year. Notarized. Witnessed. Currently in effect. Aaron leaned forward. We have a more recent power of attorney that supersedes third. Ruth placed the physician's letter on the table. A capacity evaluation by Dr. Helen Mercer, Lorraine's neurologist, dated August 9th. It confirms that Lorraine had full testamentary capacity when she signed these documents. I also have Dr. Mercer's current evaluation, completed last week, confirming that Lorraine now lacks capacity, meaning any documents she signed after her cognitive decline, including the September power of attorney your family obtained, were signed without the legal competence required to make them binding. The room went still. Linda Yates picked up the trust deed. She read it. She compared it to the title report in her file. She looked at Brenda Voss. Ms. Voss, you informed me the trust had been dissolved. Brenda's face went white. I was told the trust was never dissolved, Ruth said. The recorded deed confirms it. This property belongs to the trust. The sale cannot proceed. Linda Yates set the documents down, squared her shoulders, and said the 5 words that ended it. Asterisk. I cannot close this transaction. Asterisk. Daniel Fisk closed his portfolio. Brenda stared at the table. Aaron gripped the armrests of his chair until his knuckles blanched, and Diane looked at me like I'd pulled the house out from under her feet. The silence lasted 4 seconds. Then Diane broke it. This is ridiculous. Her voice climbed. She stood up, palms flat on the table. Nora is a paralegal. She has no authority. My husband is Lorraine's son, her only child, and he has a signed power of attorney, signed by a woman who was hospitalized for confusion the same week, Ruth said. Still measured. A power of attorney with no capacity evaluation attached. A power of attorney that, even if valid, does not grant authority over assets held in a trust. You can't do this. Aaron stood too. His voice wasn't Diane's theatrical escalation. It was raw. I have a $740,000 payment due in 6 weeks. If this deal falls through, Mr. Caldwell, your financial obligations are not this office's concern, Linda Yates said. This is my grandmother's house. The trust house, Ruth corrected, administered by the trustee your grandmother appointed. That trustee is sitting at this table. Aaron turned on me. You're going to destroy this family. I looked at him. I kept my voice at exactly the volume I practiced. Conversational, steady. You tried to sell a 79-year-old woman's home while she sat alone on her birthday eating cake that nobody came to cut. You had her sign documents during a hospital stay. You lied to the title company about a dissolved trust. And you're telling me I'm the one destroying this family? Aaron's mouth opened, closed. His fists were clenched at his sides. Diane was crying now, loud, messy. After everything I've done. Gregory sat motionless. He hadn't spoken once since he'd entered the room. He stared at the trust deed, at his mother's signature. And I could see him doing the math. She had planned this. She had gone around him. She had looked at her only son and decided he wasn't enough. Daniel Fisk stood. I think we're done here. He nodded to Linda Yates and walked out. Brenda Voss was already gathering her things, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Ruth spoke into the quiet. For the record, an Adult Protective Services investigation into the financial exploitation of Lorraine Caldwell is currently active. The September power of attorney will be formally challenged. Any further attempts to sell, encumber, or transfer trust property without the trustee's authorization will be treated as a legal matter. Diane stopped crying. She stared at Ruth, then at me, the tears still wet on her cheeks, but the expression underneath them shifting from grief to something harder. You'll regret this, she said. When Aaron loses his company, when your father has nowhere to turn, when this family falls apart, you'll remember that you did this. I stood up. I picked up the manila folder and placed it in my bag. I looked at my mother. At the cashmere, the pearls, the tears she'd learned to deploy like weather. You don't get to decide what she's worth, I said. Then I turned to Linda Yates. Thank you for your professionalism. Miss Caldwell. Linda nodded. I'll be documenting this closing as void and flagging the file. You'll receive confirmation by email. I walked out of conference room B. Ruth followed. Nathan held the door. The November air hit my face, cold and clean. I stood on the sidewalk for 10 full seconds before I remembered to breathe. Ruth touched my elbow. You did well. I did what she asked me to. That's what I mean. I drove back to Oakwood Lane with the folder on the passenger seat. Exactly where the gas station bouquet had been 9 days ago. The house was still there. The hydrangeas still lined the front walk. The porch light was on. I went inside and found my grandmother asleep in her recliner, crossword in her lap, reading glasses on. I knelt beside her chair and tucked the quilt around her shoulders. It's done, Gran. The house is safe. She stirred. Her hand found mine, the same thin grip, the same paper towel roll wrist. Her eyes opened, cloudy at first, then clearing for just a moment. Nora, I'm here. Did you keep the table? I laughed. A real one. The kind that comes up from somewhere deep and surprises you. I kept the table. She smiled. Small? Certain. Good girl. She closed her eyes. Within a minute, she was asleep again, her breathing slow and even, the crossword rising and falling on her chest. I sat on the floor beside her recliner and looked at the kitchen through the doorway. At the maple table, scratched and coffee-stained, still standing where it had stood since 1974. The folder was in my bag. The note was in my wallet. The house was in the trust, and for the first time in 9 days, the counting stopped. Here's what happened after. Aaron's balloon payment came due 8 weeks later, right on schedule. He missed it. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings on his development projects. Aaron Caldwell Properties filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in January. He sold the German sedan. Last I heard, he was working as a project manager at someone else's firm, earning a third of what he'd made before. He never called to apologize. Diane, standing in Briarwood, fractured. Not all at once. Reputations erode slowly in small towns, but the story leaked. People talk. Aunt June talked. Linda Yates documented everything in the closing file. The church group chat went quiet around Diane. She stopped attending the library board. She and Gregory moved to a condo in West Hartford in the spring. My father emailed me once in March. 3 sentences. I should have done more. I know that now. I'm sorry. I read it twice. I didn't respond. Some apologies are too late to be anything but a record of what a person knows they should have said. APS substantiated the complaint. Over the following 3 months, through 2 probate hearings that no one in my family contested, the September power of attorney was formally voided. The court appointed me as Lorraine's legal guardian and confirmed my role as permanent trustee of her trust. I deferred my bar exam. I took a leave of absence from the firm. I moved into the guest room at 14 Oakwood Lane, the one with the ceiling crack I'd traced since I was 6. And I became the person who made sure Lorraine Caldwell ate dinner, took her medication, and sat on the porch in the afternoons when the light came through the hydrangeas. It wasn't the career step I'd planned. It was the right one. On a Tuesday in April, I baked a cake, vanilla with buttercream, nothing fancy. I set it on the kitchen table, the table from Bridgeport, the one that had survived 50 years of Thanksgivings and 1 attempted theft. Lorraine came in from the living room, crossword in hand. Whose birthday? Nobody's. It's Tuesday. We're having cake because it's Tuesday. She sat down. She picked up a fork. She took a bite and closed her eyes. This is my recipe, she said. It is. It's good. She took another bite. Don't change it. We ate in the kitchen with the afternoon light striping through the window. The prism still hung above the sink, throwing small rainbows across the floor. The table held. A person's worth doesn't expire when their memory does. And the quietest love in a family is sometimes the only one keeping watch. That's my story. 1 empty birthday party, 1 manila folder, and a grandmother who remembered, long before any of them expected her to. If this reminded you to check on a loved one's legal arrangements, do it today. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.